Take it easy today, too. Welcome to Dream Dreamland with Sensei Alpha.
The end of poverty will require new policies. It will require new movements for sure.
Poverty.
I want to end poverty in America.
What is poverty?
Why settle for anything less? Like, why accept the boring, pernicious, best we can doism that has gripped the American imagination in recent years?
That's Matthew Desmond, and this is Alternative Radio. I'm David Barsamyan. This edition of AR features Matthew Desmond, Ending Poverty in America.
The housing
Why
shortage,
does the United
but not for
States,
rich people.
the richest country on earth, have more poverty than any other advanced democracy? Why does this land of plenty allow 1 in every 8 of its children to go without basic necessities, permit its citizens to live and die on the streets, and allows its corporations to pay poverty wages? There's plenty of money for F-35s, aircraft carriers, and military bases all over the world, but very little for the least advantaged among us. What perpetuates poverty, and what can be done to end it? Poverty persists, says Matthew Desmond, because the rest of us benefit from it. Our guest today is Matthew Desmond. He's a professor of sociology at Princeton University. He's a contributing writer for the New York Times Magazine. He's the author of Evicted, winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and his latest book is Poverty by America. He spoke in Seattle in late March 2024. And now, Matthew Desmond.
I'm from the West Coast. I was born in San Jose, California, but I grew up in Winslow, Arizona. You know, our family never had a lot of money, and Dad was a preacher, and we experienced some of the indignities of poverty and scarcity. Family declared bankruptcy. The bank took our home before it was all the rage. And I think that started me on this journey. That started me on this question about why. Why is that how you handle a family when they fall on hard times? You know, why do we have so much poverty in America? We have way more poverty than other peer democracies. Our child poverty rate isn't just higher than other countries. It's double. It's double what it is in Canada. It's double what it is in South Korea or Germany. You go to Europe, Europeans have this phrase, American-style deprivation. So about 1 in 3 of us live in homes making $55K or less. And many of those families aren't officially considered poor, but literally, what else do you call it? Trying to raise 2 kids in Seattle on $55,000 or less. You know, as a lived experience, there's plenty of poverty above the poverty line. And there's plenty far below it too. 38 million Americans fall below the official poverty rate drawn by our government, which means that if America's poor got together and founded a country, that country would have a bigger population than Australia. There's growing evidence that this country harbors not just poverty, but this hard bottom layer of poverty, the kind of deprivation we thought only existed in faraway places of bare feet and swollen bellies. Poverty is measured with these different income levels, right? But that's not how it's experienced. It's experienced as this exhausting piling on of problems, as chronic pain on top of tooth rot, on top of debt collector harassment, on top of the nauseating fear of eviction. It's the suffocation of your talents and your dreams. It is death come early and often. So far from a line, poverty is like this tight knot of humiliations and agonies, and its persistence in American life means that millions of us are denied safety and security and dignity in the richest country in the history of the world. So why? So some have suggested, well, there just ain't nothing you can do about it. You know, you're going to always have the poor, and the government shouldn't help, really can't do anything. And that's just a lie. There's a ton of evidence showing that government programs are effective, are essential, lifting millions of families above the poverty line every year. I just think back a little bit in history when the War on Poverty and the Great Society was launched in 1964. LBJ launched it, first year in his inauguration. These were this deep investment in the poorest families in America, this bundle of domestic policies that made food aid permanent, expanded Social Security. Finally, we got a public health insurance through the War on Poverty. Real investments, real reach. So what was the return on that investment? 10 years after the War on Poverty was launched, the poverty rate was cut in half. It was half of what it was in 1960. It's a big difference. So if we have a lot of evidence that government programs work, and we have a clear historical case of their working, maybe we have so much poverty in America because we've stopped trying to help. We've rolled back spending. And I used to think that was the story, but that's not the story. Actually, the reality is a lot messier. So if you look at the 13th biggest means-tested programs in the country, these are programs we usually think about when we think about welfare: food stamps, housing assistance, Medicaid, things like that. So spending on those programs went from about $1,000 a person the first year into Ronald Reagan's administration to about $3,400 a person the first year into Trump's administration. That's a big increase, about 230% increase if adjusted for inflation. So the country hasn't got stingier over time. The opposite is true when it comes to fighting poverty. And this makes the persistence of poverty even more baffling and confusing because decade after decade, poverty persists, even as anti-poverty spending has increased. It's hard to measure poverty. What's very hard to ignore is the fact that evictions have increased by 22% since 2000. The share of families visiting food pantries to eat, that's up 19% since 2000. The number of homeless public school kids has increased by 74% since the Great Recession. Bad debt, non-mortgage debt held by low-income families, that's up 200% since the 80s. And since the 90s, the number of Americans receiving food stamps but claiming no other cash income has more than quadrupled. These are troubling signs. They mean that for scores of us, American life is indignity. American life is unsafety. American life is hunger. Why? So I think we can start getting at this question by realizing that $1 in the budget isn't $1 in someone's hand necessarily. And I remember watching this process play out in real time with my friend Wu. So Wu and I lived together in Milwaukee. We met when I was working on my last book, Evicted, and we shared a rundown rooming house in the inner city. And one day Wu stepped on a nail in that rooming house and didn't pay it any mind. He just worked 2 jobs. He never sat down. But that injury started getting infected. And when that infection was accelerated by his diabetes, the doctor decided to take his leg before the infection took all of them. And so Wu and I had a good cry in the hospital together, but then we got down to work. I helped him apply for disability. His application was flat out rejected. Wu was not surprised about this at all. He was like, this is how it always is. And he hired a lawyer. So lawyers working on contingency can receive about a quarter of the back pay their clients receive when they're waiting for aid. And I started looking into this, and I realized that Wu's story is part of a bigger pattern. Every year in America, $1.2 billion people have disabilities. It goes to people like Wu's lawyer to help them get on disability. And that's Wu's story. With the lawyer's help, he was able to win his case. He received $3,400 in back pay. He bought a wheelchair accessible van that ran for a couple years and lit on fire. And his lawyer took him a few $100. Wu never lost any sleep that his lawyer got paid. And I get it. That lawyer performed a great service. But I also can't get over the fact that every year $1 billion in Social Security aid is not flowing to folks that need it the most. So $1 in the budget doesn't necessarily mean $1 in the hand. Sometimes the welfare state is a leaky bucket. But it's also important to recognize, I feel, that a lot of this people are not getting connected to programs. We hear so much about welfare dependency.
Good morning.
Nonstop during COVID. If you look at the data, there's not a lot of evidence of welfare dependency.
So you get the picture? What is poverty? poverty is the inequitable process of give and take. Poor give, the rich take. And doesn't matter whether JoJo or Donnie's in the house. Um, Basically, JoJo is more underhanded, and Donnie is too stupid not to lie. I mean, he lies so much he tells the truth. That's the amazing thing. And basically, he's being manipulated left, right, and center. And JoJo's just reading the script, as he has for the last 70 years. So, um, and this is no different than any other time in history. It's just that we have these things and this thing that you can see right in front of you what's going on, but you don't want to listen. You don't want to, you know, walk away from whatever is distracting you, right? So I had to basically severely distract myself by selling everything I owned and, you know, moved into a beautiful out in the middle of the woods, like, tarp over my head with a hammock, and it's very beautiful. It's very special. It's very taking care of me. But you know, um, I don't have any teeth, so it's hard for me to chew stuff. So I just had some sushi. It went down pretty easy, but it's getting going through this digestive process. Anyway, um, I'm about to go see all my doctors just to get a pair of shoes. But it's okay. It keeps me on the ball, on the beat, on the run. Um, so how are you guys doing? What's up? Yeah, here we are, 12 minutes and 51 seconds, and no one's here. And this show is about having a dialogue, right? A conversation. Some gook on the screen here, and so we used to have one, but not so much anymore. And it's tough for me to. I'm doing this because I'm in a place that I can. Right. In the last few days, I haven't been. So, and that's basically going. There, I have more than 2,000 shows. They're all pretty interesting. They're all still there. That's pretty amazing. And if you were to go watch them, you might get informed about something. Because, see, I keep a journal. And my journal turns into stories. My stories turn into novels, right? And what a journal really is the best for, it's to give you, the writer of your own journal, and you're making commentary about what's going on in your life. And then you go back a week or so later and you read it and go, oh, you go back and read that same one again 6 months from now. Oh, look at that. I mean, it keeps you on the nub of knowing where you are, what you're doing, what you're not doing. And our canary in the coal mine of sin and suffering, no matter how he cuts his hair or dyes it, his refrigerator is a good example of his life. His most recent video, just go look at his refrigerator, right? And use it as a reflection of your own life, because that's what he's best for. You look at him and you don't go, oh, that's entertaining, or that's this, or he's an A-lister, or boy, he's cool, or no, you go, what is he doing that I'm not doing or I am doing? Because he is a mirror. He's now me, I'm not so much the mirror as I tell truth to power, right? And that's been my shtick for most of my life. I actually got paid for it pretty well because I was good at it to find out the information those guys and gals really needed to know and put it in a way that wasn't confrontational, right? I don't blame anybody for my life because I made all the choices myself, right? And one's life is difficult to navigate unless you're aware of what's going on. And it's up to you to know what's going on in your life, right? So I can't blame anybody else, right? And all the things that are going on around you, now you can be observant and you can also get involved and you can also make a difference, right? But if you're only thinking about yourself and the materialness of your life, it's hard to help someone else, right? And pretty much the show here is pretty much an outreach to you, the audience, right? To have a conversation, talk to me and I'll give you some insights, right? Give me a buzz at my email, my judawake42@gmail, right? I've helped over 100 people over the years who were really, they were so desperate they dropped the line to me and I helped them out. And they changed their life completely, right? Now they don't always listen to everything I say or do everything I say. You might try this, but they have jiggered their life enough that they're not stuck anymore. At least they might be still stuck because a lot of them, half of them, after I kind of get them on the road, away from what they were stuck in, they go up in their lives, and I don't really hear from them until they get in. They paint themselves into a corner again. Then I hear from them, and that's not everybody wants to hear what I have to say. That's fine, And my health is very problematic, Every morning I wake up, I'm amazed I'm alive, right? Because that's what my doctors tell me. They want me to do all these drastic things. I said, no, I don't think so. They can't even get me a pair of shoes, right? Or teeth. Oh, that's too expensive, right? So, anyway, and I can gum things pretty good. But eating all that raw food, just kind of not really chewing it, I'll be doing that all day. So anyway, so they want to be there. Is that you, AI, my old friend? Good to see you. Get a hold of Elon. Tell him, hey, there's this guy on YouTube, Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. He wants to be your Charles Dickens on X. That would be fun. I'm very exceptional, right? Exasperating, exciting, What other X's are there? Oh, anyway.
You see, it's not manifestly clear looking at those paintings that those are the paintings of a young man, be he good or bad.
When you were doing the black paintings, were you uninterested in color at the time?
Well, I was really learning how to paint, and I was really beginning, so I didn't have any particular stake in color one way or the other. To me, the black paintings were, obviously exciting, and they were colorful. They were plenty colorful enough to me. It really was to adopt the baby. Eilish realizes she has no one to turn to. Palestinian rights, that was part of my political formation growing up as a teenager in India, because India's own experience of colonialism, which was horrific, it just made it very, very clear that we would be for Palestine, but without ever marginalizing the suffering of Jews, not just in the Shoah, but centuries of European anti-Semitism. These were part and parcel of our anti-colonial identity. It's for the same reason that we were against apartheid South Africa. It was for the same reason that we were for civil rights in the United States. And now,
It is basically a coming together of these ethno-nationalist muscular states that admire each other. And that's what the Hindu right is, and that's what the Israel is, and the United States supports them both.
And we just have 10 seconds, but you're a professor at the New School. The New School has just set up a faculty encampment, maybe the first in the country, to defend the students, the significance of this.
I absolutely find it amazing. I think the students have been incredibly inspiring. We would not have found out about the New School's complicity in Israeli weapons manufacturing in the war, and the students have actually made that clear. And so yes, it's our duty as faculty in a place that touts social justice to stand with them.
Siddharth Deb, award-winning Indian journalist, born in Northeast India. His latest book is called Twilight Prisoners.
This is the Tri-Cities first digital HD.
Bring these voices so you all don't forget why there are encampments, why there are movements in dissent around this country.
Students from George Washington University and other nearby schools joined to leave at the news conference. Here in New York City, faculty at the New School have launched the first pro-Palestine faculty encampment to protest the violent police crackdown on their students. The professors named the encampment after the Palestinian poet who was killed in an Israeli airstrike in December.
Following police raids and violence, the New School faculty established the Rafat Al-Amir Faculty Solidarity Encampments. The call from students and Palestinians in Gaza is clear. We cannot give up. We must escalate and persevere to demand our universities divest, disclose, and boycott from the war profiteers and institutions justifying and aiding the genocide in Gaza.
Overseas, students at Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland, have ended their encampment after school officials agreed to divest from blacklisted Israeli companies that have ties to the occupied Palestinian territory. In Spain, the Senate of the University of Barcelona has approved a motion to break institutional and academic ties with Israel. Last month was the Earth's hottest April on record, making it the 11th consecutive month of breaking heat records. Extreme heat has plagued large swaths of Africa and Asia in particular, forcing school closures, destroying crops, and leading to hundreds of heat-related deaths. In Bangladesh, over 1 million Rohingya refugees living in camps in southeastern Cox's Bazar have been dealing with temperatures as high as 107 degrees Fahrenheit with few options for cooling down.
This heat is unbearable, especially in our tarp-made homes. During the daytime, it has been difficult to stay inside as the tarp soaks in the heat.
Meanwhile, the UN's International Organization for Migration is warning heavy rains and extreme flooding has created over 200,000 climate refugees over the past week across Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, Somalia, Ethiopia, and Tanzania. Kenya's declared a national day of mourning Friday for the more than 200 people who've died in the country. Power Shift Africa said, quote, "The fossil fuel industry and the politicians that fail to stand up to it have blood on their hands," he said. In other climate news, back here in the United States, lawmakers in Vermont passed a first-of-its-kind bill this week that would make fossil fuel companies pay for destruction caused by climate change. Last summer, Vermont saw historic flooding, which submerged the capital, Montpelier. Damage from the July storm cost the Northeast close to $2.2 billion, according to a federal estimate. In Baltimore, Maryland, the body of the sixth and last construction worker killed in the March collapse of the Francis Scott Key Bridge has been recovered. 37-year-old Jose Manuel Lopez was originally from Guatemala. He had 2 young children. Last week, the body of 49-year-old Miguel Angel Luna Gonzalez was found. The FBI is reportedly looking into whether the massive Dali cargo ship violated a Civil War-era seaman's manslaughter statute when it struck the bridge, causing it to collapse. Here in New York, the family of Wynn Rosario a 19-year-old from Queens who was killed by police, is demanding accountability for the teenager's death after the release last week of body cam video showing the fatal encounter inside his home. In late March, Wynn called 911 while experiencing a mental health crisis. The NYPD claimed Rosario came at them with a pair of scissors when they fatally shot him, but the video shows the teen was on the other side of the kitchen. The officers first repeatedly tased him, then opened fire despite desperate pleas from Rosario's mother, who attempted to shield her son as she urged the officers not to shoot him. The killing has set off protests and intense anger among the Bangladeshi community in Queens. When Rosario's family, elected officials, and community leaders spoke at a news conference in front of New York City Hall yesterday to demand justice for Wynn. This is Wynn's brother, Ucho Rosario.
The people that's supposed to serve and protect us are the ones that's killing us. The police was so aggressive and reckless that they could have killed my mom and me too in our own house. Yeah. If anyone that wasn't a cop did what Alongi and Fresco did, they would have already been in jail. That's right. But yet they're still collecting their paycheck from the city like nothing happened.
Wynn's brother and parents also described the NYPD mistreating his family and making them feel like criminals right after the officers killed Wynn. The U.S. House of Representatives overwhelmingly shot down Congressmember Marjorie Taylor Greene's attempt to oust fellow Republican Mike Johnson as House Speaker. House Democrats blasted the
Wrong. He also said something important. What matter is Israel does down immediately, and that the whole region was going to change. Not to mention the fact that there would be much more hostility toward the message of this book, and that it would be much more difficult for us to speak. And indeed, many of our events were canceled after October 7th.
And Nathan, could you situate, of course, you've just mentioned your book, A Day in the Life of Abd Salama, Anatomy of a Jerusalem Tragedy. If you could talk about that book, what prompted it, and situate it in the context of what we've seen in the last several months.
Well, you get the picture. Democracy Now! It's a very good YouTube show on many platforms. I guess if you go to democracynow.org, you get all their shows. But again, as you can taste that show, it has a vitriol about what's going on in the world. And that vitriol is there because there's a thing lacking. And that is the dynamic of unconditional love of God, right? And the unconditional forgiveness of Jesus. Now, whether those entities exist or not is not the question. It's whether you have the faith to extend that. Live your life through Jesus' unconditional forgiveness. Live your life blessed with God's unconditional love. And then you share it with everyone around you. You're like a light bulb. That essence of God's love is not incandescent, it's photonic, right? And so go look that up in your dictionary. What else can I say? Except I gotta go. It's getting close to my time, and I got a few little errands. Maybe I'll come back later. Who knows? And it would be around 1 or 2 o'clock when I come around. Okay, so look for me there. I'll catch you later.